the DNA trap and ancestry testing. Let's talk about it. This is how it works. Companies like 23andMe, Ancestry DNA, and MyHeritage, etc. analyze your saliva sample to read markers in your genome. They compare those markers to their reference databases, which are collections of DNA from people whose ancestry is already known according to the company. Based on statistical similarity, they assign percentages of African, European, Asian, etc. ancestry. And this can be misleading for us melanated people. It's limited reference populations. The database of African DNA is heavily skewed towards certain regions, mainly West Africa, because those are the groups historically documented in the transatlantic slave trade. There's almost no data from many other African regions or from African descended peoples who stayed outside of West Africa. Racial bias in interpretation. The companies are Western owned and marketed, often with the Eurocentric assumptions. They default to sub-Saharan Africa for melanated people, even when historical or oral traditions indicate origins elsewhere, like North Africa, Egypt, the Middle East, or pre-Columbian Americas. Genetic reductionism. DNA testing reduces identity to percentages and markers, ignoring culture, history, oral traditions, spiritual lineage, community memory, which are far more meaningful. Even when our grandparents tell us, I've always been here, our families, our peoples is from here, and we can trace it back to generations, back up to 10 generations, they still try to tell us the narrative that we from Africa and we're African descent. So the ownership concerns. Many ancestry companies are indeed owned by Western or Ashkenazi Jewish investors, like I said, and some people worry that these companies use genetic data for purposes beyond genealogy. There is a historical pattern of exploiting the genetics of melanated peoples for medical, commercial, or surveillance purposes. My point about the melanin trap is tied to larger theory that powers who control genetic data could, in the future, use it for selective purposes, including eugenics or control over populations. The bigger issue, even if you submit your DNA, it doesn't prove where your lineage truly comes from if the reference database is biased or incomplete. For African descended peoples, it is extremely common for DNA results to just give a simplified or inaccurate origin that defaults to West Africa or Sub-Saharan Africa, erasing nuances, history, migrations, or connections to other continents like the Middle East, North Africa, pre-Columbian Americas. In short, your lineage and identity cannot be fully captured by a cheek swab. DNA percentages are statistical guesses, not spiritual or historical truth. So DNA testing is not a reliable tool to trace the lineage of melanated peoples if the company is biased or has limited reference populations. All history, culture, spiritual teachings, and community memory remain the true markers of ancestry. And the sub-Saharan African default is a colonial narrative embedded in technology to simplify and control identity. So if you want the truth, you need to ask your own people, your grandparents, great-grandparents, your whole family, because they know the truth.